All right, so this session is being recorded. On Thursday, we went over some of the specifics about the exam. I will tell you to either go to YouTube, my YouTube channel, or go on to your Blackboard site, and that's been posted, or on Blackboard, it's been posted, the video of the recording that I did last week or on Thursday, which was last week. And you can review that if there's anything that we miss. And I want to give you a heads up. I do need to end the review at 5 instead of 5:15 today. So I'll be mindful of that. So before I get into just kind of covering more questions, do any of you have any questions from the practice test or your Blackboard practice?
Can you do some of the labeling ones for us?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Now, when you say labeling, are you meaning the ones that have labels, or?
Yeah.
Okay. All
I
right.
was also wondering if you could go over 11 and 12 on the practice exam.
Sure. And I will tell you, if you go to and watch the recording, I did 11 and 12 on Thursday, but I will go over.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. I'm happy to go over them again. So let's go and let's just kind of dive down into some of these that we haven't covered yet in the reviews. Some of these are okay. So let's look at morphine for a second. Get my camera ready here. All right, so I'm looking at this. This is actually the last. That's not the last question. That's right. There's 30. Is there 30? That's it. Okay. 31. All right. So I'm looking at this is question 26. Now, if you have the link, I do have the I added this practice set and key, but it's the same one that you have on Blackboard. And I just wanted you to know that it's just the same one. The one on Blackboard was converted for you to use for Blackboard and then to answer it. I think some of you were missing questions because you were putting the units and it just wanted the number. So just those things, just keep in mind. I'm giving you the key so you can see that. If you don't have access to the my Microsoft OneDrive, where the practice tests and are located, what I'll do, I'm just going to put in my email address because I don't have the link in front of me right now, and I'm not going to go looking for it. So I put in my email address, and you can just email me if you need that link, and I'll forward it to you. All right. So when we're looking at anything with a label, just remember that you want to pay attention to some of the things that it's asking you. And honestly, it just comes down to just diving into it, looking at it, practicing, and paying attention that these big numbers that are here, the big 15, that you're going to see that consistently on your thing. So like notice that this is the exact same, medication, the morphine sulfate. It's that big 15. Okay. I'm just going to skip to another label, the heparin. Okay. It has 10,000, really, really big. Meperidine has 50, really, really big. Sorry, I'm trying to get that, whatever that's showing up there. At 50, really, really big. So if I'm not mistaken, it's a requirement by law that the strength be readily seen, and so they make it a very big number. These little things are really not important when it comes to the math components of what you're trying to do. So anyways, let's get back to this. So it says that the physician orders morphine 45 milligrams IM. IM means intramuscular. And then this is what you have available. And we want to know how many milliliters to administer for the injection. So when you're doing this, and when you're setting this problem up, so I'm going to turn on my camera here. And let's see if we can spotlight this. Take a guess what I was doing last. doing your review. Okay. So we had the order is 45 milligrams. Now, I typically will show you dimensional analysis, but I want you to know that even though I'm using dimensional analysis, if you're doing ordered over half, and I'll show you how that looks on this problem as well in just a moment, that works as well. But if you ever get stuck, this is what I say to myself. I start with my order. Okay, so order is the first thing I start with. Once I know the order, I apologize for the lighting here. I'm trying to see if we can get it to change over. Okay, so this says order, and then it says 45 milligrams. Then I'm always going to multiply it by kind of like what my available is. So I'm just going to say available. Okay, so that's what I'm going through when I put together and I'm doing dimensional analysis. That's the kind of the chain of events that I'm following. And the question I ask myself, I don't want milligrams, but I do want milliliters. Do I have a way to go to that? And the answer is yes, because we know that we have available 15 milligrams per milliliter, because that's what it says on the label. So I just put the 15 with the milligrams, and then milliliters, if there's no number next to it, that's assumed to be 1. Okay. It's not even assumed to be 1. It is 1. So I want you to know that that's with it. If it were 0 milliliters, there would be no milliliters there. Okay. And if it was any other milliliters like 2 or 5 or 15, then it would say 2 or 5 or 15. Okay. Then you're going to multiply across the top. So some of you, I know in the past, I've had people ask me like to make sure that I have a numerator and denominator. And that's fine. But if you understand that any number is going to be over 1, that shouldn't trip you up too much. But multiply across the top, 45 times 1 divided by 15, and you get 3 milliliters. Now, if I'm going to do dimension or ordered over half for this, okay, what is my order? 45 milligrams. What do I have available in milligrams? I have 15 milligrams. And my quantity is the 1 milliliter. Now, this quantity is really important because sometimes this is what gets missed when you're doing ordered over half. You forget to put in the proper volume. So like, let's say this was 15 milligrams per 5 ml. You would put 5 ml here instead of 15. So if you go back in the practice test where it talks about prednisone would be a good example. I think it's prednisone. It's one of the earlier questions where it asks you to solve it in teaspoons, and it tells you like 250 milligrams per 5 ml, 125 milligrams per 5 ml, something like that. And I'll show you what that is in just a second. So let me go back to the test here. Give me 1 second. Oh. Okay. So I'm going to go back up and show you what I meant, and then I'll pick another label question to try. So this is what I was talking about. So if I was doing the Diluent question, okay, and it said, you know, here's my order, the 250 milligrams. It asks how many teaspoons you would give when it's labeled below, and you see that the label says 125 milligrams per 5 ml. Okay. Now, last week, what we did is we just converted 5 ml to 1 teaspoon. That way, you know, that was just like kind of like a shortcut so you can save a step. But if you, let's say this question was asking how many milliliters to calculate and you're doing ordered over half, you would want to make sure, I'm going to write this out in annotation on the thing here. You would write out, so I'm going to show you ordered over half for this problem. Okay. I would take the 250 milligrams. So I apologize. It's going to take a little bit of time as I kind of do this, and it might be a little bit laggy on your end. Okay. So 250 milligrams, that's the order, right? Over my, what do I have available? The 125 milligrams. Okay. Times my quantity. My quantity here is either going to be 5 ml Or you could say that the quantity is going to be 1 teaspoon. Okay, so this can be changed. If you leave it as milliliters and it's asking for teaspoons, just make sure that you convert milliliters to teaspoons. But I just wanted to show you what this would look like if you were doing ordered over have, or what is sometimes called desired over have, but I think it makes more sense to do ordered, since 250 milligrams was what was ordered, over your have times your quantity. So just make sure you do that. Now, if you're doing like a capsule or a tablet or something like that, just remember that that just means 1 capsule, 1 tablet. That's how that works out. Okay. If you ever want to get frustrated, you can read, like if you go in and let's say if you take supplements, a lot of times your supplements will say, like, they'll give you the list of all the quantity of things, and it'll say like per serving, but 1 serving is 2 or 4 capsules of whatever it is. So just make sure you always read your labels when you're doing that. Now, medication is not going to be difficult like that, because obviously you don't want someone taking too much or not enough of a particular medication. It's going to be very, very clear. That's one of the reasons why the labels are printed out the way that they are printed out. Here's another one. Notice this is a completely different medication. This was Diluent. This is V-Silin K, and notice 125 milligrams per 5 ml. Now, what if I asked this question and I told you your patient has been ordered 150,000 units by mouth QID? Could I still do this problem? And the answer is yeah, because it tells you how many units per 5 ml. It's actually 200,000 units per 5 ml, or what's more commonly used is milligrams per 5 ml, which is why it's why it's bold. But anytime you see something in parentheses on a label, a lot of times what that tells you is just an alternative way to measure that. Next semester, you'll see something that has like milligrams and micrograms listed on the same label. The milligrams and micrograms are exactly the same. One will say 125 milligrams, and the other one will say 0.125 micrograms or 0.125 micrograms. And a lot of times it's just dependent on what the order is. Is the order in milligrams or is the order in micrograms? And then you would just kind of use that as a way to solve the problem. Here you can see it's the same thing. Notice how the 100,000 units per ml really stands out. Okay, so it tells you what to use, and I'm just going to follow the same strategy. I wanted to do one more. Here we go. This is the one that has both micrograms and milligrams. So notice that this got cut off. Okay, but this says 250 micrograms or 0.25 milligrams. 250 micrograms and 0.25 milligrams are the same dosage strength, right? They just converted the units. So the order is 0.75 milligrams. Okay. If I have milligrams as my order, do I want to use milligrams or micrograms?
Milligrams.
Good. That's what I would prefer. Now you could convert, you just need to make sure they're both in the same unit. So the way that this question is commonly missed is somebody will take 0.75 divided by 250, and then you'll get less than 1 tablet. Can you give someone less than 1 tablet? You can give them half a tablet, but you're not going to give them like a fraction, like 0.012 of a tablet. You could have a pill cutter and you could cut it in half, but you're not going to do that like beyond going into a half. I guess depending on the size of the pill or whatever, and what devices you have, you probably could quarter it, but that's probably not ideal. Okay. Let me go into, here's another one, 250 milligrams per 5 ml. I just wanted to show you what these look like. And I think I said last time on Thursday, I'm going to encourage you to do a Google search, look up at the images of the different medications, and just look at the labels. Just type in medication labels, and you'll see that's I even I've pulled up a couple of those over the years, and they all have a consistent look to them. You know, they tell you, well, this one's for some reason missing it, but they usually tell you the NDC number. They'll tell you the total suspension. So like in this entire bottle, there's 473 milliliters of oral suspension in this bottle. And then if I want to give somebody 250 milligrams, I'm not going to give them the whole bottle, right? I'm only going to give them 5 milliliters. Okay. And if the question says 400 milligrams, then you just convert as necessary. All right. I'm going to go to the fluid intake output. So I'll do both 11 and 12. And I'll write them both up. So let me get my paper ready here. Okay. And stop my share. All right. So my strategy for when I'm doing these types of questions, the fluid replacement, the replacement volume questions, what I typically do is I start off with my actual output. Okay. So what did the patient actually void out? Okay. Was it 100 milliliters? Was it a liter? Was it 500 milliliters? What did they actually pee out? Okay. And then I'm going to call this my replacement output. Okay. That's like what you expect. That's the output that you're going to base your replacement volume off of. And then you're just going to multiply by whatever the replacement input is. Okay. So replacement in. And that's the formula. And I have that formula on that dosage, the drug calc review, or the dosage calc review sheet that I shared the link for in the OneDrive, and I shared last time as well. So let's go in and look at the real numbers here. Okay. So the real numbers say for number 11, it says for every 125 milliliters of urine output, replace with 40 milliliters of water via PEG tube every 4 hours. If urine output for the last 4 hours is 500 milliliters, the fluid replacement volume would be blank. Okay. So the actual output was what? It was 500 milliliters. The actual output was 500 milliliters. The replacement output, the one that was stated in the first sentence, said for every 125 milliliters of urine output. That's the number you're going to put at the bottom. And I'm also going to tell you how to do this alternatively, because there's different ways to do this. Then it says to replace with 40 milliliters. So that's your replacement volume right here. Okay. And then you solve. Now, in the past, I've had people, you're doing it the right way. You're not writing up a math problem for it. And that's not a problem. The main reason I'm writing this up is to show you something, because I just tell you my thoughts out loud. It's better if we write it down. But some of you, what you do is you actually create a ratio proportion. So you know that 40 is the replacement volume for every 125 that's lost. You know that you lost 500 and you're solving for this. Sometimes I write an X here, but I know that nursing students hate doing algebra, so I won't write an X, but you're looking for that unknown. And what a lot of people do is they say like, okay, well, 125 would be 40 milliliters, 250 would be 80 milliliters, 375 would be 120 milliliters, 500 would be 160 milliliters. Okay. And then it's basically your factor here is 4. Because I had someone last time say, I just multiplied by 4. And I wasn't sure where they were getting the 4 from, but I have a feeling that I don't think they were using the 4 hours. I think what they did is they came up with this right here. They knew that 125 times 4 gave you 500. So 4 times 40 would give you the right answer. This does the exact same thing, but it's organized in a way where you can do it the same way every single time if you want to. Because oftentimes what happens is you put a fluid replacement volume that's either too much and oftentimes too little because you're not organizing it in the right way. So if you remember to take your actual output over your replacement output times the replacement volume, that will be a good way to get that. So your answer for number 11 is 160 milliliters. Now, if you got that answer, you're doing it right. Okay. So just because I'm showing you one way doesn't mean that my way is the only way to do it. Okay. As long as you got the same answer, you're doing it the right way. When they ask you to show your work, just write down some numbers. That way you're at least trying to show your process. That's what they're wanting you to do. And then number 12. Number 12 says for every 100 milliliters of urine output, replace with 30 milliliters. If urine output for the last 3 hours is 400 milliliters, what would the replacement volume be? So I'm going to do the same strategy. Okay. My actual output was what? 400 milliliters. My replacement was, or my replacement output was for every 100 milliliters, I'm going to replace with 30 milliliters. Okay. And when I do that, I'll get 120 milliliters. So notice that I set it up exactly the same way both times, given that information. And the way that you're going to see it on your test, it's going to be written like that. You're not going to have to worry about, is Jello a fluid or a liquid? You're not going to have to worry about, what's constituting as a liquid. They just want to know how much fluid would you be replacing given the scenario. So let me go back to the practice test. All right. Since we didn't get to some of these down here, I think we talked about some of these. Did anyone have any questions about the sliding scale?
If you could go over it, that'd be awesome.
Sure. All right. So the sliding scale, there's no math here, right? So it says if the patient's blood glucose level before breakfast, so their fasting glucose is 200, what should you do? Well, it says when you look at their glucose reading, look at the range that 200 falls in. If it's 200, it's between 160 and 220. You're going to give them 2 units of insulin. Okay. If that number was 270, 4 units of insulin. Okay. If the glucose is greater than 400, right, you would just say hold insulin, call MD, stat. You just follow the directions on the sliding scale. They just want to make sure you can point out ranges and identify ranges and read a table. Remember, we went over this one last time as well. And I told you that this is actually incorrect information here. You would not put a first mark at 10 units. I would definitely say you're going to draw the regular first, okay? And then your total medication level. So it's always syringe B because this is the only graphic I have, and it's the only graphic I've ever used, so unless they use something different. When they say 2 arrows, what they're asking for is if you're going to put an arrow at the total, so 50 units total. I would indicate that that's total. Okay. And then because you draw the regular insulin first, hypothetically, your regular insulin is going to be closest to the total amount. Okay. In reality, it all mixes together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, because I can show you with 2 colors. I'm just going to show you what this would look like, but I'm going to show you initially how they want you to mark it. Because it says that you're pulling up 10 units of regular and 40 units of U100. So the 10 units of regular is actually between 40 and 50. Okay, so that's supposed to be at 40. So I apologize, my arrow's a little bit off. Okay. So this is my regular, I'm just going to write R. My regular insulin basically is in this area right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to color the regular insulin location. My regular insulin is all in here. Okay. This is, I know, terrible coloring. I apologize. Okay. All my regular insulin is going to be found within this area. My U100, we're just going to make that different color. Let's just make it green. The U100 was the second insulin to be pulled up. Okay. And it's going to exist between 0 and 40. Okay. So this is all the U100 in here, but they don't ask you to mark that. Okay. They just ask you to mark the regular insulin. Okay. And then the total insulin. And this is what they mean. And I put a graphic on that that looks much better than what I'm trying to draw up here for you. But what I'm just trying to tell you is the regular was in where the red is, and the U100 is where the green is. Okay. Keeping in mind that this is technically clear and this is cloudy. The regular insulin is considered clear insulin, and the U100, the NPH, those are considered cloudy insulins. Okay. So when you're marking your syringe, make sure you put a mark at the total, and then make sure you put a mark at whatever number from the total. So you're gonna have to do some subtraction. So if that number were 30, you would put a mark at 50 and a mark at 20. And then between the two marks is where the regular insulin would reside, which is why I typically will denote here just to make sure that your instructor knows specifically that you're referring to this area here. I know it's frustrating, but hopefully that's what you're being told as well about drawing up these medications with the syringe. And so it's not completely, off base. I'm just going to leave that up for a second because I'm going to clear it here in just a minute. Okay. All right. Now let me scroll on down. Did anyone have any questions on these two? I'll go ahead and work through them just to be on the safe side. So the thing about these questions here is there's actually extra information that you do not need to know to answer the question. Okay. The thing that you need to pay attention to and what you need to learn to ignore is anytime you see volume diluent added, notice it's down here as well. Okay. This tells the pharmacy or the pharmacy tech how much water, so how much deionized water to add to the vial to get to the wanted concentration. Okay. So for here, I'm looking at 31. For 31, I would add, if I were in the pharmacy, the pharmacist is going to add 18.2 milliliters of water, deionized water, to get to this concentration, 250,000 units per milliliter. Okay. You don't need to factor this into your math. So when it comes to the math part, you ignore these columns. Okay. More often than not, people try to add or multiply with these numbers, and they don't do anything with your to solve the problem. It just adds an extra piece of information that's not needed. Okay. So when you're doing, let's say this one right here, it says Unison 1000 milligrams IM Q6H. So every 6 hours. Does anyone remember how many times a day is every 6 hours?
4.
Yep. Got it. Okay. How many milliliters would you administer and indicate which vial? Now, on the practice test and on your actual test, it'll actually tell you which vial to use, because which one do you use? I mean, you could argue that you would use the big vial. You could argue that you would use the small vial. And there's different arguments for it, but ultimately it's probably just based off of what you have available to use. My guess is that if you have a volume greater than 4 milliliters, you're going to want to use the 3 gram vial. And if you have a volume less than 4 milliliters, you would want to use the 1.5 gram vial. Okay. So if you ever get stuck, that's probably the key, is just identifying which volume would this fall into. And no matter what you use, you're going to get to the correct volume. And let me show you that here in just a second. All right. So the first question said, unison 1000 milligrams. So let me open that up. So I have 1000 milligrams. Then it tells me I have either a 1.5 gram vial size or a 3 gram vial size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 3 gram vial size, and I'm going to show you how we can get to the same answer as the key that says to use the 1.5 gram vial size. And also it'll tell you, and when you use the 3 gram vial size, you'll know to use the smaller vial size, and I'll explain why. So the 1000 milligrams is the order. I have 3 grams, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert that to milligrams. Okay. So 3000 milligrams. I could have also converted 1000 milligrams to 1 gram. So you could do 1/3 or 1000 or 3000. It was just because I had already written 1000 milligrams. I just did it this way. And then the volume would be 8 milliliters. Okay. Now, when I do my calculation, I plug that into my calculator, I'm going to get 2.7 milliliters. And I just want to double check that because I don't want to be telling you wrong. So what I'm typing into my calculator is 1000 times 8 divided by 3000. And I actually get 2.6666666, which is 2.7. You round to the nearest tenth. Okay. So 2.7 milliliters. Now, when I go back to the actual when I go back to this, notice we got the right answer, but 2.7 is less than 4 milliliters. And the difference between 1.5 and 3 gram vial sizes is that, 1.5, 4 milliliters, we double that, we get 3 grams, 8 milliliters. That's how you know it doesn't matter which vial size you use, but most likely you're going to choose the 1.5 gram vial because you're only needing 2.7 milliliters. If you pulled 2.7 milliliters out of this, you may no longer ever use that vial again, and you may waste the rest of the dose. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if that's 100% correct, but that's just how I rationalize why you would use the smaller vial size. But I can attest to you that on your actual test and on the other practice tests posted on the OneDrive, the questions are it'll tell you which vial to pull from. Okay, let's look at number 31 here. It says Pfizer pen, 350,000 units, IM stat every 6 hours, and then use the information below. Now here, it also doesn't tell you which concentration to use. On the practice test, this is considered the practice set. The practice test, and then your actual test will tell you to use either the strongest, the weakest, or the middle concentration. Usually it'll ask for the strongest concentration. In order to determine the strongest concentration, we would say, 250,000, 500,000, or 1 million. Which number is bigger? The bigger number is the stronger concentration. Also, You might also see that there's an inverse relationship between how much water was added. Okay. So I always like to use this as an analogy. If you've ever made powdered iced tea or powdered lemonade, you know that you can put, usually I'm just gonna use lemonade as an example because I know what it is. You take it'll tell you to do 8 scoops per gallon. What if you put 10 scoops in there? Right? You're going to get a stronger concentration because there's more powder to the water there. What if you put less scoops in there? Well, then now there's more water than there is powder. So let's say I put in 4 scoops, which would be normally for a half gallon, but let's say I only put a little bit of water in there. If I put less than half a gallon, it's going to be more concentrated. So it's going to have a stronger taste. If I put more water in it, I'm going to dilute it. It's going to be less concentrated. It's going to have a weaker taste. So you can use the lemonade analogy to kind of help navigate through this question if you'd like. So let me go back to solving this question. So it tells me I'm going to use the strongest concentration because right now I'm telling you that. It says 350,000 units. And then it says I have 1,000,000 units per milliliter. Okay, so there's some big numbers there, right? Lots of zeros. So what I usually do is I count up the number of zeros I have in my order. So there's 4 zeros here. And then down here, I have 6 zeros. And what I'm going to do is, so 4 is the smallest number of zeros. I'm actually going to cross out those 4 zeros. And I'm going to cross out 4 zeros from down here. So 35 over 100 is much easier to figure out and plug into your calculator. And you're less likely to make a mistake than if you type in all those numbers. But if you want to be, or all those zeros, if you want to be completely accurate, definitely you can put all those zeros in. Just make sure you don't put one more or one fewer. Okay. So 35 over 100 is 0.35 milliliters. And that is actually going to be the answer. We leave any number that's less than 1 to the nearest hundredth. Okay. If it's greater than 1, we round to the nearest 10th. That's why we didn't leave that at 2.67, okay, for this question right here. We round to the nearest hundredth when we have a number or answer is less than 1. We go to the nearest hundredth place for those. So let me go back to the thing so you can see. Now notice here, this says 0.7, and the reason is because this was probably using the 500,000 as the concentration. Because I didn't tell you which one to use, I chose the 1,000,000. If you choose 500,000, you'll get 0.7. If you choose the 250,000, you'll get a number actually greater than 1 milliliter. So that's why it's important that you are told which concentration to use, and that's why I'm telling you right now, you will be told which concentration to use. All right, so like I said, I need to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes, and I apologize, it's just a schedule conflict. Any last minute questions? And you can type them into the chat if you don't want to talk.
Is there any other problem that you could go over that's about 5 minutes? That differs from the ones that you already did?
I would say no. We've pretty much covered all the different types of questions. The only differences on a lot of these questions are just to make sure you mark like the tube X or the cup if it tells you to mark those. But everything that I've shown you is pretty much exactly, they're all the same. It's just a different, they're asking it using a different drug, or they'll ask you tablets, or they'll ask you milliliters, but they're all pretty much the same. There's nothing that's listed here that you're not going to also see on the test. There's nothing going to be new on the test that you haven't seen on here, is what I meant to say. What I would recommend is that you take time, go through this practice set, go through the practice test. If you have any questions on any of the particular problems after you go through them, like if you're getting the answers and you're doing it right, feel confident in that. Don't feel like you're doing something wrong. You are likely doing everything right. And so that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You might be getting it and solving it maybe a different way than I'm doing it. So like I keep trying to say is my way is not the only correct way. Okay. I'm not the end all be all of math. Okay. I'm just trying to help you out or give you a strategy if you don't have one already. The other thing is, if you go through it, if you get stuck on something, or like sometimes you get the right answer and sometimes you get the wrong answer and you don't want to make that mistake, email me, let me know which question it is. I can work it out for you. And then also I've worked out a lot of these already on the YouTube channel for you guys. Just see here.
And that's posted in our orientation, the YouTube channel?
No, it's on the if you email me, I have I've sent out a link the last 2 times. I just don't have it available right now to email it out to, or to post in the chat. But if you email me, and I posted my email in the chat, I'll post it again here just in case anyone came in after I posted that. And if you email me, I'll forward you the link to my OneDrive. So this practice set key is the one that you have on Blackboard, the one that you like type in your answers and taking the Blackboard test. This is just the paper version of it. And then I have a practice test that's also posted on here that you have access to if you email me, or if you don't already have the link to the OneDrive. Okay. So like I said, my email is here. After you go through the practice test, and if your practice test looks different, that's good. That means you're going to get different questions. So make sure you're reviewing all the different variations of these practice tests, because there are a couple different ones that I've put together that you have available. So you have whatever you were given on Blackboard, and then I'm giving you a practice test and key, and then this is considered the practice set and key. So the practice set has the 30-something questions, whereas the practice test only has 25 questions, which is what you'll see on your test in March. So, all right. I'll be back on here next week on Thursday, and that'll be the final review session. So practice these. If you have questions, like I said, email me. And I do apologize for cutting this short, but like I said, we should be able to go a little bit longer next week on Thursday. So, okay. I'll talk to you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.